Hey, this is Professor Fay with your anatomy lesson of the day. Here we're going to use the mini model as a way to look at the urinary system, organs and structures. And so the kidneys are the superstars of your urinary system. They're nestled here in the posterior abdominal wall. There's some fat that surrounds them to help protect them and anchor them to that posterior abdominal wall. They've also got some adrenal glands that sit on their superior aspect. Those aren't involved in kidney function. They're part of the endocrine system, but we can see them here nicely. The kidneys are also attached to the aorta in red via the renal artery that brings oxygen-rich, nutrient-rich blood into the kidneys, and then the renal vein in blue to the vena cava. The renal veins remove waste products and oxygen-poor, nutrient-poor blood from the kidneys. As blood passes through the kidneys are able to process it in a way that we can get rid of things that we don't need in our urine. So they make that urine, and then they send it down to the bladder by the urethra. So there's a urethra here on the right and here on the left. And these end up connecting to the bladder here, this kind of red and white thing. All right, so I'm going to take the bladder out of the mini model. And so now you can see just the superior aspect of the bladder. Just back here is the rectum. So this is the posterior side, for the most part, of the bladder. These two little things that stick out here are the ureters. That's where they would dump urine into the bladder. So then if I take this apart and do a mid-sagittal section, you can see the inside of the bladder here. Urine would accumulate in here. The wall of the bladder, this red, is muscle. And so basically as urine accumulates in here, there's stretch receptors that send a message to the brain that say, hey, the bladder's getting full. And so then the brain sends a message back to the smooth muscle of the bladder, the detrusor muscle, and says, okay, start to contract and squeeze urine through the internal urethral sphincter down through the urethra. The urethra first passes through this kind of brownish gland. That's the prostate gland for males. So prostatic urethra. It then passes through a little muscle called the urogenital diaphragm. That part of the urethra is called the membranous urethra. And then it passes through this sort of purple tissue in the penis. This is called the spongy urethra or the penile urethra. And it finally exits the body through an opening called the external urethral orifice.